Hey guys, we're back. Did you miss
as many 6-0s as possible because we have Ego who's like they have the bakery, so I can have a mini one. No.
Breaking. Coco Gauff's mother rushed to hospital. Worst fan controversy plus Djokovic quits his own union. What's going on, tennis fans? Welcome back to Champions Tennisitics. And buckle up, because today we're diving into some absolutely explosive developments that have rocked the tennis world to its core. We're talking family health scares, controversial comments gone viral, shocking political exits, and injury nightmares that just won't end. This is the kind of drama you simply cannot script, and it's all happening right now as the 2026 season kicks off in the most chaotic way imaginable. Before we get into the meat of this story, I need you to understand something. What you're about to hear isn't just tennis gossip or clickbait rumors. These are real, developing situations involving some of the biggest names in our sport, and the implications could reshape the entire landscape of professional tennis. So if you're a true tennis fan, you absolutely cannot afford to miss a single word of what we're covering today. Let's get straight into it. Sad news has absolutely devastated the tennis community in the past 24 hours, and I'm talking about reports that have emerged concerning Coco Gauff's mother, Coco Gauff. Now, we need to be extremely careful here because the family has understandably requested privacy during this incredibly difficult time, but multiple sources close to the situation have indicated that there may be a serious health situation unfolding behind the scenes. The whispers coming out of the inner circle suggest that Coco has been dealing with a personal crisis that goes far beyond anything we see on the tennis court, and allegedly, her mother's condition has taken a concerning turn that required immediate medical attention. According to unverified but persistent reports making the rounds in tennis circles, medical professionals may have been forced to make urgent decisions regarding Coco Gauff's care, with some sources claiming that the situation reached a point where delays were simply not an option. The phrase, "we can't wait any longer," has allegedly been used in discussions about the medical response, which, if true, paints an absolutely terrifying picture for any family to endure. Now, I want to stress that we're operating with limited verified information here because the Gauff family has rightfully kept the details private. But what we do know is that the entire tennis world has rallied around them with an outpouring of love, support, and prayers during what appears to be an incredibly challenging period. For those of you who don't know the Gauff family story, Coco and Coco Gauff have been absolutely instrumental in Coco's rise to superstardom. They've been there every step of the way, from her earliest days on the junior circuit to that magical Wimbledon run when she was just 15 years old, all the way through to her U.S. Open triumph in 2023. Coco, in particular, has been a constant presence courtside, often seen offering encouragement, strategic advice, and that unconditional maternal support that only a mother can provide. She's not just Coco's mom. She's been a pillar of strength, a voice of reason,
always a bit
and
of
a
good luck
crucial
when
part of
mom
Team Gauff.
catches the ball.
So any health concerns involving her would naturally weigh heavily on Coco's mind and heart, no matter how professional or focused the young champion tries to be. But here's where this story takes another dramatic turn. While dealing with what appears to be a private family medical situation, Coco Gauff found herself caught in the middle of a very public controversy that exploded across social media and tennis media outlets worldwide. The controversy centers around comments Coco made about American tennis fans.
I'll be honest, no. I feel like we're definitely in the tennis department the worst when it comes to that. So I've always said I wish.
Specifically remarks where she allegedly called the United States the worst when it came to fan support compared to other nations. Now, as you can imagine, those words did not sit well with a significant portion of her fan base, and the backlash was swift and brutal. Social media, being the nuclear reactor of outrage that it is, absolutely lit up with angry fans, disappointed supporters, and critics who accused Coco of being ungrateful or out of touch with the reality of what it means to be an American tennis fan. The heat got so intense that just hours before her crucial United Cup singles match in Perth, Australia, Coco felt compelled to issue an urgent clarification on her social media platforms. She needed to set the record straight before this narrative spiraled completely out of control and overshadowed everything she was trying to accomplish on the court. In her clarification post, which had an unmistakable tone of frustration mixed with genuine concern about being misunderstood, Coco wrote that people were dragging her comments out of context and missing the entire point of what she was trying to say. She explained that her observation wasn't some entitled complaint expecting Americans to fly halfway around the world just to wave flags and cheer for her. She's not that naive, and she's certainly not that disconnected from reality. Coco made it crystal clear that she understands the financial constraints that come with international travel and attending tennis tournaments abroad. This is an expensive sport to follow, and she gets that not everyone can afford to be globetrotting superfans. What Coco was actually talking about, she explained, was the stark difference in passion and visible support she's observed from fans of other countries who are already in attendance at these international events. She's noticed that when Spain plays, or when Argentina takes the court, or when any number of smaller tennis nations compete, their fans show up with national colors draped over their shoulders, faces painted, flags waving, creating an absolutely electric atmosphere that makes it abundantly clear who they're supporting and why. It's tribal, it's passionate, it's loud, and it's unmistakable. In contrast, Coco has observed that American fans who are already at these tournaments often blend into the background more, displaying less of that outward, vocal, flag-waving enthusiasm that seems to come naturally to supporters from other countries. She made it clear that this was simply an honest observation based on her lived experience as a professional tennis player competing on the international circuit. It wasn't meant as an attack or a criticism. It was just her truthful answer to a question posed to her during a press conference. She emphasized that she's grateful for any and all support, no matter how big or small it might be, and that she never intended to make her fans feel unappreciated or attacked. But despite her clarification, the damage to her mental state and focus may have already been done, because what happened next on the tennis court was nothing short of a complete disaster. Stepping onto the court in Perth to face Spain's Jessica Buses-Monero, a player ranked 42nd in the world, and someone Coco should theoretically handle with relative ease, the American superstar looked absolutely lost from the very first point. Whether it was the distraction of the fan controversy, the emotional weight of her mother's reported health situation, or just an inexplicable off day, Coco came out flat, tentative, and completely out of sync. She dropped the first 5 games of the match in rapid succession, barely putting up a fight, as Buses-Monero seized control with aggressive, confident tennis. This isn't just a quiet resignation or a mutual parting of ways. This is a full-blown, public declaration that Djokovic's values no longer align with the organization he helped build from the ground up, and the implications of this split are absolutely massive for the future of player representation in tennis. Taking to social media on Sunday, Djokovic dropped this bombshell announcement on an unsuspecting tennis world, writing that it has become clear his values and approach are no longer aligned with the current direction of the PTPA, citing specific concerns about transparency, governance, and perhaps most tellingly, the way his voice and image have been used and represented by the organization. Let's rewind for a moment and talk about why the PTPA exists in the first place. When Djokovic and Pospisil launched this organization back in 2021, they were positioning themselves as rebels with a cause, fighters for player rights in a system they believed was fundamentally broken and stacked against the athletes who actually generate all the revenue and excitement in professional tennis. Their vision was ambitious and revolutionary. They wanted to create a true players' union that could engage in collective bargaining on behalf of all professional tennis players, similar to what exists in major American sports leagues like the NBA, NFL, or Major League Baseball. The idea was that players, as independent contractors, were getting a raw deal from the tours, the Grand Slams, and the governing bodies, and that only through collective organization and unified negotiation could they secure fair compensation, better working conditions, and a legitimate seat at the table when major decisions about the sport's future were being made. At the time, it was a bold and somewhat controversial move that threatened the established power structure of the ADP, WTA, and ITF. These organizations had operated with relatively little player pushback for decades, and suddenly here were some of the biggest stars in the game saying enough is enough. We deserve better, and we're going to organize to get it. The tennis establishment, predictably, was not thrilled with this development, but with Djokovic's star power and influence behind the PTPA, it was impossible to simply dismiss or ignore. Fast forward to 2025, and the PTPA has taken an increasingly aggressive and litigious approach to achieving its goals. In March of last year, the organization filed a massive class action lawsuit against both the women's and men's tours, the International Tennis Federation, and the Sports Integrity Agency, accusing these bodies of systematic abuse of power, anti-competitive practices, and willful disregard for player welfare. The lawsuit alleged that these organizations have conspired to suppress player earnings, both on and off the court, through restrictive rules, inadequate prize money distribution, and policies that limit players' ability to monetize their own names, images, and likenesses. Later, all 4 Grand Slam tournaments were added as defendants in this sprawling legal battle that has the potential to completely reshape professional tennis as we know it. Here's the fascinating and revealing detail, though. When that lawsuit was filed, Novak Djokovic's name was conspicuously absent from the list of plaintiffs. For someone who co-founded the organization and had been its most visible and vocal advocate, this was eyebrow-raising to say the least. At the time, Djokovic explained his decision not to be a named plaintiff by saying he wanted other players to step up and take leadership roles, that it shouldn't always be him at the forefront of these battles. But now, with the benefit of hindsight and his complete exit from the PTPA, it's clear that his hesitation to put his name on that lawsuit was rooted in much deeper concerns about the direction the organization was taking. In his departure statement, Djokovic specifically mentioned concerns about how his voice and image were being used by the PTPA, which strongly suggests that he felt his celebrity and credibility were being leveraged in legal and political battles that he either didn't fully endorse or didn't have sufficient control over. Was the PTPA using Djokovic's unparalleled stature in the game as a battering ram to force negotiations and settlements, without necessarily having his blessing on every tactical decision? Were they invoking his name and reputation in ways that made him uncomfortable or that conflicted with his personal principles? Based on his statement, it certainly seems that way. Djokovic made it clear that moving forward, he's going to focus on 3 things: his tennis, his family, and contributing to the sport in ways that align with his personal principles and integrity. He wished the players and those involved with the PTPA the best as they continue forward, but for him, this chapter is definitively closed. There's no ambiguity, no leaving the door open for reconciliation, no maybe we'll see how things develop. It's done, finished, over. For the PTPA, losing Novak Djokovic is nothing short of catastrophic from a credibility and leverage standpoint. He was their biggest star, their loudest megaphone, their shield against criticism, and their primary source of legitimacy in the eyes of both players and the tennis establishment. Without Djokovic's backing, the organization loses an enormous amount of bargaining power and influence. How many players will continue to support an organization that couldn't maintain the support of its most important founder? How seriously will the ATP, WTA, and Grand Slams take the PTPA's demands if the greatest player of all time has walked away? These are existential questions that the organization will now have to grapple with. For Djokovic personally, this move signals a return to singular focus on what he does best, which is winning tennis matches and adding to his already unprecedented legacy. With the Australian Open rapidly approaching, a tournament where he's won a record 10 titles, and where he'll be chasing Grand Slam number 25, Djokovic is systematically eliminating distractions and controversies from his life. He's clearing the decks, streamlining his focus, and positioning himself for one more deep run at the major championships. At this stage of his career, every decision is calculated and purposeful, and walking away from the political drama of the PTPA is clearly part of that calculation. But while Djokovic is removing obstacles to stay competitive and focused, another major star is fighting desperately just to get healthy enough to compete at all. We need to talk about Emma Raducanu, because the British sensation's injury struggles have reached a point where they're threatening to define her career more than her tennis accomplishments, and that's absolutely heartbreaking to watch unfold. Tennis fans worldwide were salivating at the prospect of a blockbuster United Cup showdown between Emma Raducanu and Naomi Osaka, 2 Grand Slam champions who are both on comeback trails, both trying to recapture the magic that made them household names, both seeking to prove that their best tennis is still ahead of them rather than behind them. This was the dream match that would have given us all kinds of fascinating storylines and narratives to dissect. It was scheduled, it was promoted, the hype was building, fans were excited, and then, in the cruelest twist of fate, it was snatched away at the last possible moment. Emma Raducanu was forced to withdraw from her opening match against Japan, handing her spot to Katie Swan and leaving British tennis fans absolutely devastated by yet another injury setback for their brightest star. The official reason given was frustratingly vague, described only as a physical struggle or ongoing fitness concerns, but reports from multiple sources have suggested that Raducanu is dealing with bone bruising on her right foot, the same foot that gave her problems at the end of last season and forced her to shut down her campaign early after competing in China. British team captain Tim Henman tried his best to put a positive spin on the situation when speaking to broadcasters, but even his typically optimistic tone couldn't hide the concern and uncertainty surrounding Raducanu's condition. Henman revealed that the decision to withdraw came down to the wire and was extremely difficult to make because Emma had been building up her fitness and practicing really well in the lead-up to the tournament. She had been doing static drills in London, working on her game without too much movement initially, and had only recently progressed to full practice matches on court. According to Henman, she was very, very close to being ready, but with the Australian Open just 2 weeks away, the team felt they had to take a cautious approach rather than risk a more serious injury by pushing her to compete before she was truly 100%. The problem is that in professional tennis, especially at the highest level, being very close to ready isn't good enough. You're either healthy and capable of competing at full intensity for potentially 3 hours in brutal heat and humidity, or you're not. There's no middle ground, no participation trophies, no credit for trying. And for Raducanu, this pattern of being almost ready, nearly there, just a few days away from full fitness, has become frustratingly familiar over the past 2+ years since her magical US Open title run in 2021. The withdrawal didn't just disappoint fans and derail Raducanu's own preparation. It nearly cost Great Britain the entire tie against Japan. Katie Swan, thrust into the spotlight against a resurgent Naomi Osaka on extremely short notice, was simply overmatched and overwhelmed by the power and experience of the former world number 1. Swan fought hard but ultimately succumbed to a straight sets defeat, 7-6, 6-1, leaving Britain in a precarious position. Fortunately for Team GB, the men's side came through when it mattered most. Billy Harris secured a crucial victory over Shintaro Mochizuki, and the mixed doubles pairing of Neil Skupski and Olivia Nichols pulled off a tense, dramatic win in the match tiebreak to secure a 2-1 overall victory and keep British hopes alive in the tournament. But the spotlight remained firmly on Emma Raducanu and the questions surrounding her participation moving forward. Tim Henman admitted that her status for Britain's next match against Greece is completely up in the air, existing in a state of uncertainty that's becoming all too familiar for everyone involved with British tennis. The team was essentially forced to keep Emma on the lineup sheet because removing her entirely would leave them with zero flexibility and only one option at every position. But whether she'll actually be healthy enough to take the court remains a mystery that won't be solved until the last possible moment. This is the heartbreaking reality of Emma Raducanu's post-US Open career. Since that fairy tale run through New York, where she became the first qualifier ever to win a Grand Slam title, her professional journey has been an absolute nightmare of wrists, ankles, feet, and various other body parts that refuse to cooperate long enough for her to build any momentum or consistency. She's changed coaches multiple times, she's altered her training regimen, she's taken extended breaks, she's worked with different medical and fitness teams, and yet her body continues to break down at the worst possible moments. The timing of this latest setback is particularly cruel because we're now just days away from the Australian Open, the first Grand Slam of the year, and a tournament where Raducanu desperately needs to perform well to salvage her ranking and restore confidence in her ability to compete consistently at the highest level. Is she being overly cautious and saving herself specifically for Melbourne, banking on the idea that skipping United Cup matches will leave her fresher and healthier for the major championship? Or is she simply not ready, not healthy, and facing the very real possibility that her Australian Open participation is also in jeopardy? Based on Henman's comments and the vagueness surrounding her condition, it's genuinely difficult to say with any confidence. What we can say is that this is becoming a troubling pattern that raises serious questions about Raducanu's long-term viability as a top-level professional tennis player. It's one thing to have an injury here or there. Every athlete deals with physical setbacks over the course of a long career. But when your career becomes defined more by medical bulletins and withdrawal announcements than by match victories and tournament runs, something fundamental needs to change. Whether that's her training load, her technique, her physical conditioning protocols, her medical team, or some combination of all these factors, someone needs to figure out why her body keeps breaking down and implement a solution before her career trajectory becomes irreversibly derailed. The cruel irony is that when Raducanu is healthy and confident, we've all seen flashes of the brilliant tennis that won her the US Open. The talent is undeniable, the shot-making ability is spectacular, and the competitive fire is absolutely there. But talent means nothing if you can't stay on the court long enough to develop it. And right now, Emma Raducanu is in a desperate race against time and her own body to salvage what could still be a phenomenal career if she can just catch a break, literally and figuratively. So here we are, folks, just days into the 2026 tennis season, and we've already experienced enough drama, controversy, heartbreak, and shocking developments to fill an entire year. Coco Gauff is dealing with the double burden of a reported family health crisis and a public backlash over misinterpreted comments while trying to defend a United Cup title and prepare for a Grand Slam. Novak Djokovic has walked away from the political organization he created, choosing personal integrity and competitive focus over continued involvement in tennis politics. And Emma Raducanu remains trapped in an agonizing cycle of almost being healthy enough to compete, her enormous potential still tantalizing but increasingly difficult to access. The storylines we're tracking right now will define the early months of this tennis season and potentially have ramifications that extend far beyond these immediate events. What happens with Coco Gauff's mother? And how does that situation impact Coco's ability to compete at her best? Can Djokovic truly compartmentalize his exit from the PTPA and focus purely on tennis? Or will this controversy continue to follow him? Will Emma Raducanu finally get and stay healthy? Or are we watching a cautionary tale about unfulfilled potential play out in real time? These are the questions that will dominate tennis media coverage over the coming weeks. And trust me, we will be here tracking every single development as it happens. I want to hear from you in the comments section right now. What's your take on Coco Gauff's situation? Do you think the emotional weight of her mother's reported health crisis and the fan controversy contributed to that shocking loss? Or was it just an off day that had nothing to do with external factors? And what about Djokovic's decision to quit the PTPA? Was he right to walk away when his values no longer aligned with the organization? Or should he have stayed and fought from within to steer things in a better direction? Let's get a conversation going in the comments because these are complex issues with no easy answers, and I genuinely value your perspectives and insights. If you made it this far, you're clearly a serious tennis fan who cares about these stories and wants to stay informed about everything happening in our sport. Do me a huge favor and smash that like button right now to let me know you appreciate this kind of in-depth, comprehensive coverage. Make sure you're subscribed to Champions Tennisitics because we're going to be bringing you all the breaking news, analysis, and insider information as this season unfolds. And hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single upload. Because trust me, with everything happening right now, you cannot afford to fall behind on these developing stories. We're tracking the situation with Coco Gauff extremely closely, and the moment any verified information becomes available about her condition and the family situation, you will hear about it here first. This is a developing story that transcends tennis and reminds us that these athletes we watch and cheer for are real people dealing with real struggles that have nothing to do with forehands and backhands. Thank you so much for watching, for engaging, and for being part of this incredible tennis community. I'll see you in the next video with more breaking news, more analysis, and more of the drama that makes tennis the most compelling sport on the planet. Until then, keep fighting, keep competing, and never stop believing in the power of this beautiful game. This is Champions Tennisitics, and I'm out.
Millionaire before 20. At 15 years old, Coco Gauff was already earning more than most adults. While most teens worried about homework, she was playing on the world's...
Raducanu will miss Wimbledon this summer with her latest injuries ruling the British #1 out of the championships. since remarkably winning the US Open back in